The Galactic Concordance Chamber was more massive than anything Taiwan had ever imagined. The central space station orbited a neutron star, its architecture a blend of 1,000 different species designs. Inside the main chamber, representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered in a circular amphitheater that could hold tens of thousands of beings. Taiwan stood in the petitioner's platform at the center, feeling very small. Next to him, Hyejin gripped her datapad so tightly her knuckles were white. Ambassador Thrillnax waited nearby, ready to speak on their behalf. The Forgotten Dream was docked safely in the station's protected bay, with all 50 awakened consciousnesses interfaced and ready to testify. High above them, suspended in a sphere of shimmering energy, floated the Concordance Arbiter. This being was from a species called the Eternal Chorus, ancient beyond measure and devoted to studying all forms of consciousness. The Arbiter appeared as shifting patterns of light and sound, never quite taking a solid form. This session is now open. The Arbiter's voice resonated through the chamber, seeming to come from everywhere at once. The petitioners may state their case. Thrillnax stepped forward, his forearms gesturing gracefully. Honored Arbiter, representatives of the Concordance, we come before you today to address a fundamental question. What defines a living being? What rights does consciousness deserve, regardless of the vessel that contains it? From across the chamber, a harsh voice interrupted. This is a waste of the Concordance's time. Commander Vax emerged from the Krell delegation section. He was massive, easily 3 meters tall, his insectoid body covered in black armor plating. His multifaceted eyes gleamed with cold intelligence. The facts are simple. These humans found abandoned salvage and now attempt to steal what is rightfully claimed by the Krell Dominion under established salvage law. The sleepers are not salvage, Taiwan said, finding his voice despite his fear. They are people. They are data, Vax countered. Sophisticated programs stored on crystalline matrices, no different from any other computer system. The ship was abandoned 300 years ago. No one claimed it. Therefore, it and its contents are salvage, available to whoever can make use of it. The Arbiter's light pulsed gently. The petitioners claim these data patterns represent true consciousness. Commander Vax, you claim they are merely programs. How shall we determine the truth? Thrillnax spoke quickly. We have prepared testimonies from the awakened individuals. Let them speak for themselves. Let the Concordance judge whether these are truly living minds. I object, Vax said. Any sufficiently advanced program can be made to simulate consciousness. This proves nothing. Then what would constitute proof? The Arbiter asked. This was the question everyone had been dreading. Vax smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. True consciousness cannot be programmed. It must include unpredictability, emotion, irrationality, things that no computer can truly replicate. If these patterns are merely sophisticated recordings, they will respond consistently to stimuli. But if they are truly alive, truly conscious, they will show genuine emotional response to unexpected information. The Arbiter considered this a reasonable test. Petitioners, do you consent to this examination? Taiwan looked at Hyejin, who looked at Thrillnax. They had not prepared for this. But what choice did they have? We consent, Taiwan said. The testimony began. One by one, holographic figures materialized in the chamber, projected from the Forgotten Dream. Each awakened consciousness told their story. Who they were, why they volunteered, what they hoped to achieve. The Concordance listened with varying degrees of interest. Some species seemed moved by the stories, others remained skeptical. The Krell delegation sat stone-faced, unmoved. Then it was Da-Un's turn. She materialized in the center of the chamber, her holographic form somehow conveying both strength and vulnerability. She introduced herself calmly, explaining that she had been a teacher, that she had 2 children she loved more than anything. I volunteered for consciousness preservation because I believed in the future, she said. I wanted my children to grow up on a new world, free from the overcrowding and pollution of Earth. I knew I might never see them again in physical form, but I thought that maybe, centuries later, we could be reunited as a family on some distant colony. She paused, and Taiwan could see her holographic hands trembling. When I woke up 2 weeks ago, I learned that 300 years had passed. I learned that the colony mission failed. I learned that my children, if they lived out their lives naturally, died centuries ago. I will never see them again, never hold them, Never tell them I love them. Her voice broke. Tears formed in her eyes and rolled down her holographic cheeks. I am told that I am not real, that I am just data, just a program. But if that is true, then why does this hurt so much? Why does my heart feel like it is breaking? Why do I wake up in my preservation matrix and forget just for a moment that my babies are gone and then remember all over again and feel the loss like a fresh wound? The chamber was completely silent. Even the usual background murmur of alien delegates had stopped. Everyone was watching this woman pour out her grief. Commander Vax stood up. This proves nothing. She could be programmed to simulate these emotions. Then why do you look uncomfortable? Dayun asked suddenly, looking directly at him. Why are you standing farther away from me than you were a moment ago? You are an insectoid species. You do not process emotion the way humans do. But you recognize suffering when you see it, do you not? Vax's mandibles clicked together in what might have been agitation. I recognize a clever performance. Let me tell you something about my children, Dayun continued, ignoring him. My daughter, she was 7 when I volunteered for the mission. Her name was Hannah. She loved to draw. Every night before bed, she would draw me pictures of what she thought our new colony world would look like. Trees with purple leaves, animals that did not exist. She had such an imagination. Dayun's voice grew softer. My son was only 4. He did not really understand where I was going or why. The night before the procedure, he asked me if I was going to bring him back a star. Just like that. Mama, will you bring me a star? And I promised him I would. She looked around the chamber at all the assembled aliens. I failed. I did not bring him a star. I did not bring my daughter to a world with purple trees. I did not give them the future I promised. All I have now are memories and the chance to maybe help the 50,000 others still sleeping, to give them something better than what I got. I am conscious, she said firmly. I am alive. I hurt, I hope, I dream. And if you cannot see that, then maybe the problem is not with me. Maybe the problem is with laws that were written before anyone imagined that consciousness could exist like this. The Arbiter's light pulsed brightly. I have heard enough. More testimonies followed. Other awakened individuals shared their stories. Some were angry, others sad, others hopeful. But all of them proved, in their own way, that they were more than programs. They were people. Finally, after hours of testimony, the Arbiter spoke. I must confer with the wisdom of my species. This decision is too important to make lightly. The chamber waited in tense silence. The Arbiter's form shifted and changed, patterns of light dancing in complex sequences. Time seemed to stretch. Then at last the Arbiter spoke. I have reached a decision. The consciousness patterns stored aboard the vessel known as the Forgotten Dream are indeed living beings. They possess true awareness, true emotion, true consciousness. They are not property. They are not salvage. They are people, deserving of all rights and protections afforded to any sapient life. Cheers erupted from some sections of the chamber. The human delegation, small as it was, shouted in triumph. Threlnax allowed himself a smile. Commander Vax stood rigid, his body language radiating fury. This is a mistake. You are setting a dangerous precedent. Perhaps, the Arbiter agreed, but consciousness itself is dangerous. It disrupts. It creates. It demands recognition. These humans have shown us something remarkable. They found a way to preserve the essence of who they are beyond physical form. The galaxy must adapt to this reality. The Arbiter's light focused on the Krell commander. The Krell Dominion is hereby ordered to withdraw all claims on the Forgotten Dream and its passengers. Furthermore, the 50,000 sleeping consciousnesses are granted refugee status. The Concordance will provide resources to help establish a settlement where they may be safely awakened and given new physical forms. What kind of physical forms? Someone in the chamber asked. That will be for them to decide, the Arbiter replied. Android bodies, cloned bodies, or perhaps they will choose to remain in digital form. The choice is theirs. In the days that followed, everything changed. News of the Concordance's decision spread across the galaxy. Several alien species approached humanity with new interest. The idea that consciousness could be preserved and transferred opened up possibilities that many had never considered. Resources poured in from unexpected sources. A wealthy Calarian consortium donated advanced manufacturing facilities. A species called the Makers, famous for their biotechnology, offered to grow cloned bodies for those who wanted physical form again. The Nebula Barons lived up to their deadly reputation. Taewon watched through the view screen as waves of radiation washed over the ship's barely functioning shields, painting the darkness in shades of purple and green. The sensor screamed warnings constantly, complaining about particle density and electromagnetic interference. "This place is trying to kill us," Hyejin muttered from her station. She was monitoring the shields, which were holding but just barely. "Even if the Krell do not find us, we might not survive long enough for it to matter." "The coordinates are just ahead," Yoonji reported. She had been awake for almost 70 hours now, and her holographic form was starting to flicker more frequently. All 10 of the awakened minds were showing signs of strain. According to Subin's data, there should be a settlement on a moon called Taeyang. "I see it," Minho said, his voice tired but excited. "Small moon tidally locked to a gas giant. Scanning shows artificial structures on the surface. Someone definitely lives there." As they approached, a communication signal cut through the static. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself. You are entering protected space." Taewon activated the communication system. "This is Taewon, captain of the Forgotten Dream. We were given these coordinates by someone named Subin. We are looking for sanctuary." There was a long pause. Then a different voice came through, older and rougher. "The Forgotten Dream? That name is in our historical database. It was a colony ship that disappeared 300 years ago. Who are you really?" "I am telling the truth," Taewon said. "And I can prove it. We have the original navigation officer aboard. His name is Jiho." Jiho stepped forward and spoke into the communication system. "This is Navigation Officer Jiho, service number 7342. We were en route to colony site designation Taeyang Prime when our engines failed. The mission was lost. Our cargo consists of 50,000 digitized human consciousnesses still in preservation. We need help." Another long silence. Then dock at landing pad 7. Come alone and unarmed. If this is some kind of trick, you will not leave this moon alive. The Forgotten Dream descended through the thin atmosphere toward the moon's surface. The settlement was built into a crater, protected from the worst of the radiation. It was small, maybe housing a few thousand people at most, but the buildings looked sturdy and well-maintained. Taewon and Hyejin prepared to disembark. The holographic crew would remain aboard, both to guard the precious sleepers and because they were too weak to maintain their forms much longer. "Be careful," Yoonji warned. "We do not know these people. We do not have a choice," Taewon replied. "We need allies." Landing pad 7 was guarded by armed personnel in environment suits. They escorted Taewon and Hyejin through an airlock into the settlement proper. Inside, the place felt lived in and comfortable, despite being hidden away in one of the galaxy's most dangerous regions. They were taken to a central building and led into an office where a man waited. He was perhaps 60 years old, with gray hair and scars on his face that spoke of a hard life. He wore old military insignia that Taewon recognized as Earth Defense Force, though the design was decades out of date. "My name is Dong-hyun," the man said. "I run this settlement. Sit down and tell me everything." For the next hour, Taewon and Hyejin explained their story: the auction, the discovery of the consciousness cores, the Krell pursuit, the desperate flight to safety. Dong-hyun listened without interrupting, his expression hard to read. When they finished, he sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. 50,000 people, he finally said, all asleep for 3 centuries waiting for a dream that never came true. It is one of the saddest stories I have ever heard. "Can you help us?" Hyejin asked. "That is a complicated question," Dong-hyun replied. He stood and walked to a window overlooking the crater settlement. "This place, we call it Taeyang. It is home to people who got tired of being treated like second-class citizens in the galaxy. Humans are still newcomers out here. Most alien species see us as weak, primitive, barely worth noticing. So some of us came out here to build something of our own." "You are hiding from the galactic government?" Taewon asked. "Not exactly hiding. We just do not advertise our presence. Out here in the Barrens, we can live free without alien politicians telling us what to do." Dong-hyun turned back to face them. "But your situation is different. The Krell have already found you once. They will find you again." A woman entered the office, moving with the confident stride of a soldier. She was younger than Dong-hyun, but carried herself with similar authority. "This is young me," Dong-hyun introduced her. "My second in command and our best pilot." Young me studied Taewon and Hyejin with sharp eyes. "I have been monitoring galactic communication channels. The Krell are already spreading the story. They are claiming salvage rights to your ship through galactic law, calling it an abandoned military asset. That is ridiculous, Heejin protested. The ship was legally sold at auction. The law is whatever the strongest species says it is, Young Mai replied bluntly. The Krell are using legal language to justify taking what they want. And unfortunately, they have a point. By galactic law, those consciousness cores could be considered cargo rather than living beings. Taewon felt his heart sink. So what do we do? Donghyun and Young Mi exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them. Finally, Donghyun spoke. There is only one way to protect those 50,000 sleepers. You need to prove they are not cargo. You need to prove they are living beings with rights. How? Taewon asked. By bringing the case before the Galactic Concordance. It is the ruling body of all united species. If you can convince them that the sleepers are people, not property, then the Krell cannot legally claim them. Hyejin looked skeptical. The Galactic Concordance? That is practically impossible to access. And even if we could bring a case before them, why would they listen to us? Because you would not be going alone, a new voice said from the doorway. They all turned to see a Quillarian entering the office. But this one was different from Velmoth. This Quillarian wore diplomatic robes and moved with grace and dignity. His forearms carried data pads and official-looking documents. Allow me to introduce myself, the Quillarian said. I am Ambassador Threlnax. I have been monitoring your situation with great interest. You are with the Krell? Taewon asked suspiciously. Absolutely not. I represent a faction within the Concordance that opposes the Krell Dominion's aggressive expansion. When I learned about your discovery and their pursuit, I knew this could be an important moment. Threlnax spread his arms wide, a gesture of openness among his people. Human consciousness digitization technology is unique in the galaxy. No other species has achieved it. This makes those 50,000 sleepers incredibly significant. If they are recognized as living beings, it establishes precedent. It proves that consciousness can exist in non-biological forms and still deserve rights. Why do you care about that? Hyejin asked. Because I believe in progress, Threlnax replied. The galaxy is changing. New technologies, new ways of existing, new forms of life. The old laws were written for a simpler time. They need to evolve. Your case could help make that happen. Donghyun nodded slowly. Threlnax contacted us 3 days ago asking for our help. He wants to sponsor your petition to the Concordance. But there is a condition, Young Mi added. You need evidence. You need to wake more of the sleepers and document their consciousness. Show the galaxy that these are real people with real thoughts, feelings, and memories. Taewon thought about the 10 who were already awake, exhausted and fading. Our engineer aboard the ship has been developing a safer protocol for waking them, but we can only wake a few at a time without risking damage to the cores. Then wake as many as you can safely manage, Threlnax said. Record their testimonies. Let them tell their stories. The Concordance needs to see these people as individuals, not as abstract concepts. Over the next week, Hyejin worked with the holographic engineers to perfect the awakening process. They managed to wake 50 additional consciousnesses, carefully selecting individuals with compelling stories. Among them was a woman named Daun. She had been a teacher and a mother of 2 children. When she awoke and learned that 300 years had passed, her first words were asking about her family. My children, she said, her holographic form trembling with emotion. They were supposed to follow on the next colony ship. Did they make it? Are they out there somewhere? Jiho had to tell her the truth. The colony mission had been abandoned after the Forgotten Dream disappeared. Her children, if they had lived out their natural lives, had been dead for nearly 3 centuries. Daeun's grief was raw and real. She cried holographic tears that looked as genuine as any physical person's. But then she gathered herself and asked, what about the others? The 50,000 still sleeping? Can we save them? We are trying, Taewon told her gently. But we need your help. We need you to testify before the Galactic Concordance. Tell them your story. Help them understand that you are a person, not property. Daeun straightened up, her sadness transforming into determination. I volunteered for this mission because I wanted my children to have a better life. Even if they are gone, I can still fight for the dream we all shared. I will testify. The Forgotten Dream shuddered violently as Minho and his fellow engineers pushed every remaining system to its absolute limit. Taewon gripped the edge of a console to stay upright while Hyejin worked frantically at her station, monitoring power levels that kept threatening to spike into dangerous territory. Magnetic clamps released, Yoonji announced from her position. We are free of the station. Maneuvering thrusters at 40% capacity. Through the view screen, Taewon watched the docking station slowly fall away behind them. It should have felt like victory, but he knew better. The 3 Krell ships were already moving to intercept, their sleek forms cutting through space with terrifying grace. They are hailing us, Hyejin said, her voice tight with stress. Ignore it, Yoonji ordered. She might have been asleep for 300 years, but her tactical training came back like muscle memory. We cannot negotiate with the Krell. They will demand we surrender, and if we refuse, they will simply take what they want by force. One of the other awakened minds, a middle-aged man named Kyung-soo, looked up from his engineering panel. The thrusters are holding, but barely. We are moving at maybe 1/10 of normal speed. At this rate, the Krell will catch us in less than an hour. Then we need to be smarter, not faster, Yoonji said. She pulled up a tactical display. The Nebula Barons are our only chance. If we can reach them, the radiation will interfere with their sensors. We will never make it there before they catch us, Taewon said, stating the obvious problem. Yoonji smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Not if we run in a straight line. But the Krell think we are desperate and panicked. They expect us to run directly away from them. What if we do something unexpected instead? She highlighted a region on the star chart, a debris field left over from some ancient battle or accident. This field is dense with metal fragments. It will make scanning difficult. We go in there, shut down all non-essential systems, and hide. That is insane, Hyejin protested. Our shields are barely functioning. One collision with debris could tear the hull apart. Do you have a better idea? Yoonji asked. Nobody did. Taewon looked around at the holographic figures working to save their ship. These people had trusted humanity enough to transform themselves into digital consciousness, had slept for 3 centuries waiting for a dream that never came true, and now they were fighting for survival with a broken ship and almost no hope. They deserved better. Do it, he said. Take us into the debris field. The Forgotten Dream turned slowly, painfully, its damaged systems protesting every movement. The Krell ships noticed the course change immediately and adjusted their pursuit. Warning shots flashed past the view screen, bright green energy blasts that lit up the darkness of space. They are getting impatient, Jiho observed. His holographic form stood near Taewon, watching everything with sad eyes. I have seen the Krell operate before. They will try to disable our engines and board us. Let them try, Yoonji muttered. She was guiding the ship with incredible precision, using the weak thrusters to dodge between floating chunks of metal and rock. Minho, I need you to do something dangerous. More dangerous than what we are already doing? The young engineer asked. Much more. I need you to rig the aft cargo bay to explosively decompress on my signal. Make it look like we took a direct hit. Minho's eyes widened in understanding. You want them to think they destroyed us. Exactly. We vent atmosphere and debris, shut down all systems including life support, and drift like a dead ship. With all this metal around us, their sensors will have trouble confirming the kill. They will need to board us to check. Hyejin was already shaking her head. If we shut down life support, Taewon and I will suffocate. Not if you put on emergency suits and seal yourselves in the forward cabin, Yoonji countered. You can survive for hours that way. Taewon met his sister's eyes. She was scared, but she nodded. They had come too far to turn back now. The Krell ships were closing fast, their weapons charging for another volley. Taewon and Hyejin scrambled into emergency suits, the old equipment stiff and uncomfortable but functional. They sealed themselves in a small forward compartment while the holographic crew prepared their trap. Everyone ready? Yoonji asked over the internal communication system. Confirmations came from all around the ship. Minho had rigged the cargo bay perfectly. Kyung-soo had prepared to shut down all systems on command. The other awakened minds stood ready at their stations. Now, Yoonji said calmly. The cargo bay exploded outward in a controlled burst. Atmosphere and debris shot into space, creating a cloud of metal fragments and frozen air. At the same moment, every system on the Forgotten Dream went dark. The ship went completely silent and still, drifting among the debris field like just another piece of wreckage. Inside his suit, Tae-wan could hear only his own breathing. The darkness was complete except for the faint emergency lights in his helmet. Through the small viewport, he could see the Krell ships approaching cautiously, their searchlights sweeping across the debris. A crackling voice came through his suit radio. It was Jiho, using a tiny amount of power to maintain communication. "They are scanning us. Stay absolutely still." The wait was agonizing. Minutes stretched like hours. Tae-wan watched the Krell ships circle the debris field, their lights occasionally illuminating the scarred hull of the Forgotten Dream. He could see figures moving inside the Krell vessels, probably arguing about whether to board or not. Then finally, the ships began to move away. They had apparently decided that the Forgotten Dream was dead and not worth the effort of boarding in a dangerous debris field. Their engines flared bright as they accelerated away, heading back toward the station. "Wait," Jiho whispered. "Wait just a bit longer." They waited in darkness for another 30 minutes until the Krell ships were small dots in the distance. Only then did Jiho give the all-clear signal. "Bringing systems back online," Minho announced. Slowly, so we do not create a sudden energy signature. Power flowed back into the ship gradually. Life support resumed, and Tae-wan gratefully removed his helmet to breathe fresher air. Hee-jin was pale but smiling with relief. "That actually worked," she said in disbelief. "Do not celebrate yet," Yoonji warned. "We bought ourselves time, nothing more. The Krell will return to the station and question the staff. When they learn this ship was sold to you, they will start searching. We need to reach the Nebula Barons before they figure out we are still alive." The holographic crew worked through the night, nursing the damaged ship toward safety. Tae-wan tried to help where he could, but mostly he watched in awe as these people from another era used creativity and determination to keep them alive. During a quiet moment, he found himself talking with Jiho near the bridge view screen. "How long can they stay awake like this?" Tae-wan asked, gesturing to the working holograms. "Not long," Jiho admitted. "Interfacing with the ship systems puts strain on their consciousness patterns. They will need to return to preservation sleep soon, maybe in a few days at most. And you? You have been awake for 300 years, Jiho smiled sadly. I am different. I am just a fragment, not a full consciousness. I was designed to endure, but even I grow tired." A proximity alarm beeped softly. Hee-jin checked her sensors and looked up with wide eyes. There is a communication coming through on an encrypted channel. It is using old Earth military codes. Everyone turned to look at her. Yoonji moved quickly to the communication station. "Put it through." A woman's voice filled the bridge, distorted but urgent. "Forgotten Dream, this is Subin. I am an information broker operating in this sector. I need to warn you. The Krell did not find you by accident. Someone flagged your auction purchase in the Galactic Network. They knew what that ship contains. Who are you?" Tae-wan demanded. "How do you know about us?" "I make it my business to know things," Subin replied. "Especially things involving human technology and the Krell. Listen carefully. The Krell Dominion has been hunting for human consciousness cores for decades. Your technology is unique in the galaxy. No other species has successfully digitized complete minds. If they capture those 50,000 sleepers, they will use them as slaves, living computers to solve problems and fight wars." Hye-jin looked sick. "Why would they want that?" "Because human minds are creative in ways that other species are not. You solve problems differently. You think around obstacles instead of through them. To the Krell, that is incredibly valuable. Worth any price." Yoonji leaned forward. "What do you suggest we do?" "Reach the Nebula Barons and hide. I will send you coordinates for a safe location inside the radiation zone. There is a human settlement there, small and secret. They can help you. But you need to move fast. The Krell commander leading this hunt is named Vax. He is not the type to give up easily." The communication cut off abruptly. Tae-wan and Hye-jin looked at each other, then at the holographic crew that had saved their lives. "A human settlement?" Tae-wan said. "I did not know there were any hidden colonies out here." "There is much about the galaxy you do not know," Jiho said quietly. "The question is, do we trust this Subin person?" Yoonji studied the coordinates that had been transmitted. "We do not have many options. The Krell will find us eventually if we stay exposed. At least in the Nebula Barons we have a chance." Tae-wan raised his hands slowly, trying to appear non-threatening to the holographic figure floating before them. The man looked solid despite being made of light, his military uniform marking him as someone from centuries past. "My name is Tae-wan. This is my sister Hyejin. We just bought this ship at auction. We did not know anyone was still here. The hologram studied them carefully, his eyes moving from Taewon to Hyejin and back again. Bought? This vessel was sold as salvage? Yes, Hyejin said, finding her voice. It has been abandoned for almost 300 years. Are you an AI? I am Jiho. I was the navigation officer of the Forgotten Dream. What remains of me is a fragment barely functional. I have been waiting a very long time. His voice carried a weight of sadness that seemed too real for a simple program. Taewon gestured toward the crystalline structures floating in the tank. What are those things? Jiho turned to look at the crystals, and something like pain crossed his transparent features. Those are people. 50,000 people to be exact. They are the reason this ship exists. Hyejin pulled out her scanning equipment again and aimed it at the crystals. Her eyes went wide as she read the data. These are data cores. But the complexity is incredible. I have never seen anything like this pattern structure. Because they are not simple data storage, Jiho explained. Each core contains a complete human consciousness. Memories, personality, emotions, everything that makes a person who they are. 300 years ago, 50,000 volunteers allowed themselves to be digitized and preserved. Taewon felt his breath catch. Why would they do that? Jiho's image flickered as if the memory pained him. The first expansion era was desperate times. Earth was overcrowded and dying. We needed to spread out to the stars, but the distances were too great. Traditional colony ships took decades or even centuries to reach habitable worlds. Many colonists died during the journey or arrived too old to build anything. He gestured to the floating crystals. So human scientists developed a solution. Volunteers could have their consciousness extracted and stored in these matrices. No need for food, water, or air, no aging. They could sleep peacefully during the long voyage and be restored to new bodies when we reach the colony world. That is incredible technology. Hyejin breathed. Why do we not use it now? Because this ship never reached its destination, Jiho said bitterly. We were 3 months into the voyage when our engines failed. Some kind of cascade malfunction that I still do not fully understand. We sent distress signals, but we were too far from any established routes. Nobody came. The physical crew, including my original body, eventually died. Only I remained, a fragment copied into the ship's systems to maintain the sleepers. Taewon looked at the thousands of crystals floating peacefully in their preservation field. So these people have been asleep for 300 years? Waiting for rescue. Waiting for someone to finish what we started, Jiho corrected. They deserve to live, to see the new world they sacrificed everything for. Before anyone could respond, Hyejin's pad suddenly beeped an alert. She checked it and her face went pale. We have a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up 3 ships approaching our position. They are not broadcasting friendly identification. Taewon moved to a nearby console and tried to access the station's external sensors. The Forgotten Dream systems were mostly dead, but some basic functions still worked. What he saw made his stomach drop. 3 military-grade vessels were indeed approaching, and their profiles matched Krell Dominion scouts. Why would the Krell be interested in us? He wondered aloud. Jiho's expression darkened. Because someone told them what this ship contains. The Krell have been hunting for human consciousness technology for decades. If they capture these cores, they will enslave those minds. Use them as living computers to solve problems and fight wars. Hyejin was already packing up her equipment. We need to leave now. Can this ship move? The engines are completely destroyed, Jiho said. Even if they were not, we would need weeks of repairs before attempting flight. Taewon thought quickly. Then we need to get the cores off the ship and somewhere safe. How many can we carry? You cannot simply remove them, Jiho said urgently. The preservation field is delicate. Moving the cores without proper equipment could damage or destroy the consciousness patterns inside. These people would die. The station's proximity alarms began blaring. The Krell ships were getting close. Taewon checked the sensors again and cursed. They had maybe 20 minutes before the Krell arrived at the docking bay. There has to be something we can do, Hyejin said desperately. Jiho was quiet for a moment, his holographic form flickering as if he was thinking hard. There might be one option, but it is extremely dangerous. Tell us, Taewon demanded. The consciousness cores can be temporarily interfaced with the ship's systems. It would allow the people inside to wake up at least partially. They could help us. Some of them were engineers, soldiers, pilots. Together they might be able to get this ship moving again. Hyejin shook her head. You said the cores are fragile. Waking them could damage their patterns. It could, Jiho admitted. But if the Krell capture them, they will definitely be enslaved and eventually destroyed. At least this way they have a chance to fight for their freedom. Taewon looked at his sister. She was scared. He could see it clearly, but she was also the best engineer he knew. Can you do it? Can you interface the cores safely? She bit her lip, thinking. Maybe I would need to be very careful. And we could only wake a few at a time. The ship's power systems are too weak for more than that. How many? Taewon asked. 10 at most. Any more and the whole system might collapse, Jiho nodded. 10 would be enough. I know which cores to choose. People with skills we need right now. The station alarms grew louder. A voice came over the communication system. Attention all vessels. 3 unidentified ships are requesting permission to dock. Station security advises all personnel to remain calm. Taewon made his decision. Do it. Wake them up. Hyjin moved quickly to the tank controls. Jiho guided her through the process, his centuries of watching over the cores making him an expert. She worked with steady hands despite her fear, connecting cables and adjusting power flows. I am selecting cores now, Jiho said. His holographic hand reached into the tank and specific crystals began to glow brighter. They slowly moved through the preservation field toward a connection port. These are engineers, combat specialists, and tactical officers. Good people who volunteered knowing they might face danger. One by one, the 10 selected cores locked into interface positions. Hyjin monitored her screens carefully, watching the data streams. Consciousness patterns are stable. Beginning wake sequence. The engineering bay filled with a low humming sound. Energy flowed from the ship's emergency reserves into the connected cores. The crystals began pulsing faster, their light growing stronger. Then suddenly voices filled the air. 10 different holographic figures materialized around the bay, looking confused and disoriented. They were men and women of different ages, all wearing old-style uniforms. Some looked around in wonder, others in fear. Where are we? A woman asked. What happened to the mission? How long have we been asleep? A man demanded. Jiho stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. Everyone, please stay calm. I know you are confused. I will explain everything, but first I need you to understand the situation. We are in danger. The Krell are coming to capture you. We need your help to escape. The newly awakened consciousnesses looked at each other, processing this information. Then one of them, a tall woman who carried herself like a soldier, spoke up. I am Corporal Unji. I was tactical officer for this mission. Jiho, what do you need us to do? We need to get this ship moving, Jiho said. The engines are destroyed, but maybe, just maybe, we can jury-rig something that will work long enough to escape. Another hologram, a young man who looked barely out of school, stepped forward. I am Minho. I was an engine specialist. Let me see what we are working with. The awakened minds immediately went to work, moving through the ship's systems like they had never left. They could interface directly with the computers, seeing data, and making changes faster than any physical person could. Taewon and Hyjin watched in amazement as these people who had been asleep for 3 centuries suddenly became a coordinated team. The main engines are gone, but the maneuvering thrusters might still work, Minho reported. If we reroute all available power and use the station's magnetic clamps for initial push, we could achieve basic movement. Where would we go? Taewon asked. We cannot outrun Krell military ships. Unji brought up a star chart. The Nebula Barrens are close, 6 hours at best possible speed. If we can reach them, the radiation will hide our signature. That region is incredibly dangerous, Hyjin protested. Less dangerous than the Krell, Unji replied coldly. Outside, through the docking bay windows, they could see the Krell ships arriving. Dark angular vessels that looked built for war. The auction hall smelled like oil and disappointment. Taewon stood near the back wall trying to look casual while his stomach twisted with worry. Next to him, his sister Hyjin tapped nervously on her data pad, checking their account balance for the 10th time that hour. We have enough for maybe 1 bid, she whispered, and only if nobody else wants it. Taewon nodded but kept his eyes on the raised platform where Velmoth conducted the auction. The Quilarian merchant was an impressive sight with his forearms gesturing wildly, and his scaled face split in what passed for a smile among his species. He was currently showing off a newer salvage item, a transport vessel that had only minor damage. The bids were already climbing far beyond what Taiwan could afford. They had been struggling for months. Their salvage business was barely staying alive, and every credit mattered. Taiwan needed something, anything, that they could fix up and sell for a profit. Otherwise, they would lose everything their parents had built. Lot 47, Velmoth announced, his voice carrying across the hall through speakers. An old human vessel, very old. The Forgotten Dream, they called it. A holographic image appeared above the platform. Taiwan leaned forward, studying the ship. It was big, far bigger than anything he had ever owned. The hull was covered in scars and corrosion. Parts of it looked like they might fall off if someone breathed on them too hard. It was clearly ancient, probably from the first expansion era when humans first started reaching for the stars. Around the hall, other bidders were already losing interest. A group of Kalarian merchants laughed and turned away. A corporate representative from some mining company checked his device and shook his head. Nobody wanted an old human ship that looked ready to fall apart. Starting bid is 5,000 credits, Velmoth said, sounding almost bored. Do I hear 5,000 for this piece of human history? Silence filled the hall. Taiwan pulled out his portable scanner and pointed it at the hologram, running a quick analysis. The readings came back mostly as expected. Dead engines, failing life support, outdated navigation systems. But then something caught his eye. The fuel tank readings showed an unusual density measurement. It did not make sense. The numbers were way too high for any normal fuel. He ran the scan again, double-checking. The same impossible readings appeared. 4,000. Velmoth lowered the price. Surely someone wants this antique? Haijin tugged at Taiwan's sleeve. We should look for something else. That ship is falling apart. Taiwan showed her his scanner. Look at the fuel tank readings. She frowned, studying the data. That cannot be right. Either the scanner is broken or there is something in there that is not fuel, Taiwan finished. 3,000 credits, Velmoth called out. My final offer before I move on. 3,000 for the Forgotten Dream. Taiwan made a decision. He raised his hand. 3,000. Every head in the auction hall turned toward him. Velmoth's face twisted into what might have been surprise or amusement. A human bidding on human garbage. How touching. 3,000 to the desperate salvager in the back. Anyone else? The hall remained silent. Other bidders were smiling now, clearly thinking Taiwan was an idiot. Going once, Velmoth said. Going twice. Sold to the human who apparently enjoys wasting his money. Laughter rippled through the crowd as Taiwan made his way to the payment station. Haijin followed, looking worried. I hope you know what you are doing, she muttered. So do I, Taiwan admitted. They completed the transaction and received the access codes for the ship. It was currently docked at the far end of the station, in the section reserved for vessels that nobody wanted to look at. As they walked through the station corridors toward the docking bay, Haijin kept checking the ship's basic information on her pad. It is over 300 years old, she said. Built during the first expansion era. It was supposed to be a colony ship, but there is no record of it ever reaching its destination. It just disappeared from the logs about 280 years ago. Where did they find it? Taiwan asked. Floating in deep space near the outer rim. A cargo hauler spotted it and towed it to the nearest station. That was 6 months ago. It has been sitting in storage ever since. They reached the docking bay and stopped at the airlock. The Forgotten Dream loomed before them through the transparent wall. It looked even worse in person than in the hologram. The hull was a patchwork of old repairs and newer damage. Entire sections looked like they had been hit by weapons fire at some point. One of the main engine pods was completely missing. Welcome to your new ship, Haijin said dryly. Taiwan entered the access code and the airlock door hissed open. The interior was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered on as they stepped inside, casting strange shadows on the walls. The air smelled stale and metallic. They moved through the corridor slowly, their boots echoing in the silence. Haijin pulled out her diagnostic tools and started scanning systems as they walked. Every reading confirmed what they already knew. The ship was a wreck. Life support is dead. Navigation is dead. Engines are dead. Communication is dead, she listed. We bought a very expensive floating coffin. But Taiwan was not listening. He was following the corridor toward the engineering section, where the fuel tanks would be located. Something about those scanner readings bothered him. He needed to see for himself. The engineering bay was huge, taking up almost a quarter of the ship. Ancient machinery lined the walls, covered in dust and decay. In the center of the room stood the main fuel tank access panel. Taewon approached it carefully and pulled out his scanner again. The readings were even stranger up close. The density was impossible for any known fuel type. And there was something else. A faint energy signature, very weak but definitely present. The tank was not empty and it was not inactive. Hee-jin, come look at this. His sister joined him and ran her own scans. Her eyes widened as she saw the results. What is in there? Only one way to find out, Taewon said. He found the manual release lever for the tank access hatch. It was old and stiff, but with effort he managed to pull it. Mechanisms groaned and complained, but slowly the hatch began to open. What they saw inside made both of them freeze in shock. The tank was not filled with fuel. Instead, hundreds of crystalline structures floated in a soft blue glow suspended by some kind of energy field. Each crystal was about the size of a human head, perfectly formed and pulsing with faint light. What are those? Hee-jin whispered. Before Taewon could answer, the lights in the engineering bay suddenly brightened. Systems around them began powering up with beeps and hums. A holographic display flickered to life near the tank, showing streams of data that moved too fast to read. Then a voice spoke, rough and tired, like someone waking from a very long sleep. Authorization detected. Access granted. Initiating emergency protocols. Both siblings jumped back as a holographic figure materialized in front of them. It was a man, middle-aged, wearing what looked like an old military uniform. His image was transparent and flickered slightly, but his eyes were sharp and focused. Who are you? The hologram asked. And why are you on my ship?